What is tariff from tariff, as they call it?
Yeah, it's definitely going to affect anybody that buys products from overseas.
How it's going to impact the end users.
But it's going to be targeted per product category. Yeah.
How those platforms are going to be affected with this tariff?
Yeah, like I said, with the de minimis, that's going away.
Yeah, is there any way that they can work around tariff?
Ecom Squeezed podcast.
Welcome back to Ecom Squeezed. I am a host, Sebastian, founder of Retail-Outsource. And today we are going to discuss a topic that's going to affect every Amazon seller in the US, the bottom line margin, tariffs, and their impact on product sourcing. Joining us today, it's Jim Kennemer, the founder and Kennemer.
Yeah, sorry.
The founder and managing director of Cosmo Sourcing, with over a decade of experience sourcing products from Vietnam and China. Jim have worked firsthand with Amazon seller, especially with the recent tariff hikes that's going to happen soon. Welcome to the show, Jim.
Great. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Great. So, I want to jump straight into the topic. So what is tariff, Trump tariff, as they call it? So could you just give us, what's going to happen?
Yeah, for sure. So, nothing's happened yet, but there's definitely a proposal that most people expect is going to happen. But right now, the current proposal by the next administration is 60% tariffs on China, and then 10% universal tariffs that will apply to all goods imported to the United States, even Canada, Mexico. Obviously the main intent is to encourage domestic production and domestic purchasing.
Yeah.
It's definitely going to affect anybody that buys products from overseas. If we buy from China, it's going to affect you much bigger than elsewhere, but pretty much affect everybody. And they're also going to get rid of currently with the tariffs, it's 25% from China and nothing from anywhere else. And it only applies to products above $800. So there's some loopholes to get around it, but they're also going to get rid of the minimum value as well. De minimis is what it's called.
That's going to be crazy for sellers, hike of 60%.
No, definitely. Definitely.
So that's a big change coming up. From your opinion, how sellers can prepare for those changes?
I think the best way, if you're currently sourcing from China, is to look for alternative countries to source from. You're still going to hit with 10% tariffs, but 10% is obviously much less than 60. It really depends on your product, if it can be sourced outside of China or ideally in the United States. But obviously you got to figure out what your product is, what other countries are suitable for that, and then look around at those countries. And obviously I'm biased. We're a sourcing company, so I think the best way obviously is work with a sourcing company like us to do it for you. But we do have experience and can definitely help anybody with that.
When do you think it's going to come into effect? It's going to be fast, or once the inside power, it's going to be like stack. They're going to give some buffer time to adjust for the new tariff.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Obviously, Trump isn't going to take office until January 20th of next year. So that's the absolute earliest. I don't think has the bill ready signed day one. So you obviously have a couple of month head start to get ahead of it. In terms of timeline, it's hard to say. He's already, the guy, Robert Lighthizer, is the guy who architected the first round of tariffs, and he actually he's already announced that he's going to be in charge of trade. So obviously that's in my opinion, a pretty firm endorsement that it's going to happen at some point. But when, it could be 3 months, 6 months into the administration, maybe it takes a year. Obviously, you can't just snap your fingers and make tariffs happen. You got to write tariffs, write the bill, how they apply. There's legalese and lawyers, I guess, that handle that, and got to make it happen. So in my opinion, I think the earliest we're looking at probably is 3 to 6 months within the administration, but that's just my personal opinion of seeing how slow bills go and that. But it's obviously something Trump campaigned on, something he's promised, something that resounded well with his base. And, he had 25% tariffs that he started in his first administration, and Biden didn't get rid of them because that was one of his more politically popular policies.
Yep. Great. Regarding how it's going to impact the end user, at the end of the day, they're going to take the foot, right, for all these hikes.
Yeah. It's definitely going to impact cost. Costs will go up because, you have two ways to kind of handle tariffs. Obviously, solution A is raise your prices accordingly based on how much tariffs you're going to pay, which, 10% tariff means 10% price increase, 6% tariff, just loosely. The other way is cut into your profits, just eat the cost. But I'm pretty sure most people like profits. They don't want to make less profit. Those are really the only two ways. So I think, ultimately it's going to raise costs to the end user.
Do you think that, the US have enough capacity to manufacture, some
No.
of the items like electronics and stuff like that, or the
I mean, for
expertise?
some higher value items, yeah. But everything, no. It's really product dependent. I mean, there's actually a decent amount of like plastic manufacturing in the United States, injection molding manufacturing, because we have looked around for that. If you're looking at consumer electronics, it's going to be a little tricky, but there are like, I work with a company out of Chicago, for instance, I know of that can make PCB boards and stuff like that in the United States. So I do know of domestic manufacturing. Mattresses are made in Wisconsin. So there are going to be a lot of products you can source, but I mean, to be frank, like cheap, basic stuff, probably not. Like I'm thinking
Yeah.
like clothing, backpacks, bags, stuff like that. These factories employ sometimes 2 to 10,000 people that, cut and sew and work a sewing machine all day. You're not going to get that capacity in the United States to do those products and compete with them. So it's still going to make more sense to source overseas. Maybe you have to get tariffs, but it's really dependent on the product. I think some higher value items would be good. Some products that are more automated in their manufacturing, less labor costs. Labor costs in the United States are among the highest in the world. Good skilled workers though, but it's going to be some categories, but for the most part, no.
Oh, that's great. And regarding, I assume that you have spoken with a lot of sellers.
Oh, yeah.
And, what kind of things goes through their mind? Are they prepared? Do they have anything in place at the moment to tackle this?
Yeah. No, I mean, the main thing, most people that we talk to, like, so just to give you some background with our sourcing company, we started in China in 2012, but we moved to Vietnam in 2014. We have teams based throughout Southeast Asia, and we're setting up a team in Mexico as well. So we just started sourcing in Mexico this summer. So, I mean, for the sellers, I mean, the main thing they're looking at is finding alternative sourcing locations outside of China, just to bring those costs down. And I mean, it was like 2019 with the last round of tariffs. A lot of people moved production to Vietnam. So Vietnam and other countries too, India, Thailand, Bangladesh, etc., all have the same thing. I just had on the ground experience in Vietnam, so I'm using that as an example. But a lot of investment, huge amount of investment, literally pretty much overnight came to Vietnam. So tons of factories were set up in Vietnam to handle the excess capacity. Existing factories expanded, new factories were invested in. A lot of people say it was all Chinese factories. It wasn't all Chinese factory, but Chinese did make up a decent amount. I would say probably about 30% of factories were Chinese factories, still financing and building pretty much clones of their factories in Vietnam. The rest were actually Vietnamese and foreign-owned factories, not Chinese. But yeah, I mean, this definitely had a huge investment, and Chinese or Vietnamese factories got more sophisticated to kind of jump their way up the value chain.
And for China, that will be a kind of a backlash, right? A big one. So they have invested so much infrastructure on the manufacturer side. So a tariff like this, it's going to damage. So do you think that you answer that question like they might open in Vietnam, for example? Maybe there's other countries they might channel the product through just to avoid the tariff.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely been talks of that. I think you'll see more investment, another big boom in investment of non-Chinese manufacturers all over the world. And I mean, they're even during the Biden administration, you had 100%, I think it was 100% tariff on batteries from China. So, I mean, China's solution to that was move production to Mexico. And I think they're talking about having targeted tariffs at Mexico specifically to avoid that. But it's going to be targeted like per product category. Same thing with cars. I mean, there's like a import tax on EV cars. Europe's actually talking about doing the same for Chinese-made EVs. But I mean, it's going to be a trade war. So, I mean, there's going to be retaliatory tariffs on both sides. I mean, the states can't just raise it. And everybody's we're just going to sit there and take it. They have leverage too a lot of times.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think we're going to see tariffs all from everybody.
Yeah.
We'll see how that long-term affects. We're just looking at the first set of tariffs, and that's kind of what I'm planning on. And that's not as far as I can plan, because who knows who's going to do next.
Yeah. Jim, the next question that I have is, regarding product category. I assume, Vietnam, you mentioned Vietnam. I don't think they have the full manufacturing. I assume they apparels and clothing and stuff like that they're focused into. So what about the other products?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest categories do textiles, which is anything cut and sew, which ranges from backpacks, bags, luggage, home textiles like bed sheets, clothing of all types. They do really well. I think they actually do better than China, both in terms of quality and price, and have been for a while. Wooden goods is great in Southeast Asia. Vietnam has tons of access to tropical hardwoods. So that's something they consistently compete, probably among the best in the world. And when you say wooden goods, I'm talking like furniture and stuff of that nature, and home goods, molds, decorative stuff too. Those are probably the biggest ones, but like kind of mentioned the new investments since 2015 and stuff they're investing in. We're doing a lot more plastic injection molding. We're doing a lot more like silicone, food grade silicone stuff. a lot more stamped metals and higher end metal goods. We're talking more technical stuff too, which is really something that really kind of got invested in the last 5 years. And I think that trend will continue. But yeah, you can't do everything there. Like for instance, electronics. You can't do electronics outside of China, consumer electronics. I mean, if you're Apple, you can spend literally billions to build your own supply chain. But when you're just some VA seller starting out, I mean, it's China has the value chain and no one else in the world even comes close to that. So you won't have to eat those tariffs. Yeah, stuff like that. But I mean, we do a lot. And we were able to do a lot in Vietnam. And then, like we said, we're starting in Mexico. We're starting to do a lot of stamped metal goods there. Kind of biggest, most technical project we're doing is some aftermarket car parts for off-roading car parts. But starting to do some work uniforms there too. It's kind of some heavy duty stuff for like garbage men, stuff like that. There are definitely options there. But yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Jim, my next question will be regarding Temu and Shein.
Yeah.
How those platforms are going to be affected with this tariff?
Like I mentioned, the de minimis, I can never say that word. I probably just butchered it. But there's basically $800. If you're below $800 in value, it's kind of personal. You can ship directly from China and avoid tariffs.
Yeah.
And yeah, Shein and Temu are really taking advantage of that right now. And that's one of the big reasons that, in the next round of tariffs, one of the big things is there's no minimum. Anything exported out of China to the United States is going to be hit with a tariff, no matter the value. And this specifically targeted Shein and Temu. And I think the way they're looking at getting around that right now is setting up warehousing and distribution in the United States. I know they invested in that. I'm not too familiar with that degree of investment in warehousing, but they're definitely trying to move it so things ship out of the United States. And I'm not sure if they're sourcing elsewhere, but yeah, I think they're going to get affected because they really kind of took advantage of a loophole and the de minimis value that to avoid tariffs, which was $800 prior, but is $0 now.
Yeah, I had a call this morning with one of the Temu onboarding manager, and
nice.
He was saying that no matter what, they're going to beat Amazon on pricing. So they are onboarding local brand owners from who sell on Amazon, and they want to beat Amazon on its own locally.
Yeah,
so that's
they can have lower fees.
Yeah, and there's no fees.
Yeah,
and it's crazy. They're planning to take over eBay within 2 hours, and then Amazon. So that's their plan in the book.
Yeah.
That's great. For example, if you take a Vietnam, Jim, do they have enough infrastructure in terms of, shipping containers and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Or there'll be a bottleneck at some point. So my question was, for Vietnam, for example, do they have enough, have the infrastructure to ship? I assume there'll be a spike in orders, right, to Vietnam, for example. So can they cope? I can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I think that's not going to be as big a problem as it was prior, because last year Vietnam has spent a significant amount of money to improve their infrastructure, build new highways from scratch, build new rail lines, build new industrial parks, expand the ports. Yeah, when I first started in 2014, that was a big issue because anytime you go near a port, there would literally be miles long line of trucks and just truck drivers hanging on hammocks to get in ports. Like the wait to get in ports was sometimes days. But literally in the last few years, they invested heavily to expand ports and haven't seen that as much of at all. So I'm not that worried about infrastructure. Like we used to have deal with brownouts and blackouts. They've invested in new electrical grid. So I think last I checked, they were investing about $200 billion with a B into improving the infrastructure. This started in like 2019. So they're building new airports. They're building new ports, expanding existing ports. Yeah, they're spending about $200 billion with a B to improve the infrastructure in the country. And that started like in 2019. So we're pretty much halfway through it. So I'm not too worried about that part. It's definitely improved. I know people probably have horror stories from the first time they looked at Vietnam, and I have some from when I started. But yeah, that's not a big issue. We used to get, there are times when some factories, brand new modern factories, you had to go dirt roads on trucks to get there, and they had to, sometimes got flooded and trucks stuck in the mud. And that was like 2014, 2015 when I experienced that. But now, time I go to park, it's brand new factory and nice 4-lane highways that are freshly paved.
So that's good. And I assume, Jim, there'll be a spike in ordering, right? Because of, it's going to come. So there'll be a spike in ordering from, for example, Vietnam. So do you think the shipping price is going to go up because of that?
Probably shipping price. Honestly, I think the biggest thing with any spike like that is capacity of the factories. In 2019, when we first had the first round of tariffs go into effect, there's obviously huge increase in demand with Vietnam. So factories all of a sudden, you could place an order with them and get a purchase agreement, but they're, it's like November now, you want to start a purchase agreements like 3 months, maybe after Tet holidays, which is same as Chinese New Year. So you might not be able to start production until March, even if you want to, just because they didn't have capacity. And that was the big issue we came across with the first round of tariffs. And it's very likely, it's very possible that could happen again. I think if it actually goes into effect, it's going to happen then. I think a lot of savvier buyers, people are plugged into everything. They're looking at their options now. They're asking us to get prices, get contacts in factories, but I'm pretty confident most people are just going to keep those, not most, but a lot of people are just going to keep those in their, contact list. And then if the tariffs go in effect, they'll actually follow through with moving, but they're not going to do it today.
And in terms of, sellers will look into other countries, right? So if you want to select 3 countries apart from China, which all countries will be that?
I think Vietnam, India, and Mexico are going to be the 3 biggest winners in the trade war. You don't do too much in India. It's quite complex to source from and has this very convoluted regulation system. There's some dedicated Indian sourcing companies, but I mean, like we said, we've been in Vietnam for 10 years. We've setting up a team in Mexico, so we're pretty well positioned there. And it's definitely kind of where I see the future of sourcing going. And we're also expanding Southeast Asia broadly. So we have team members in Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia. I'm looking at the Philippines and South Korea too, and Taiwan. Forgot Taiwan.
And regarding, let's take an example of an iPhone, right?
Yeah.
So do you think that, that will be impacted as well with the tariff?
I think they're going to move a lot more production out of China. I know it's obviously their main one, but I know they started iPhone production in India. They do iPad and AirPod production in Vietnam. I think they're starting to do some Mac production in Vietnam as well. So I think you're going to see a lot more of that production move. Yeah, I mean, stuff like that takes years to get set up because the complexity of electronic devices like that. And even then, you're still going to source a lot of the components from China. So, I don't know, let's just say RAM modules, maybe the chips. I don't know what all they source from China, but those high value items are still going to be sourced from China. They're probably still going to be impacted by the tariffs, and, you'll still see an uptick in cost.
Yeah. That's great. And for Chinese New Year, is that something that you have in Vietnam, for example?
You do.
Okay.
It's called Tet, TET. They don't like the term Chinese New Year, so either Lunar New Year or Tet. But yeah, it's the same day. It's effectively the same holiday.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. So the same length.
Yeah, it's a 2-week official holiday.
So it's the same procedure, to put in an order well ahead of Chinese New Year and the same procedures. And is there any other countries that's, in the same line like Chinese New Year? So Vietnam is there?
Too much. No, not really. Vietnam and
Taiwan.
Taiwan. Yeah, Taiwan definitely has the same.
Okay. So from your experience, who will be the winner with this trade war? Who's going to lose and who's going to win?
I personally think Vietnam, and I'm betting on Vietnam. I've kind of bet on Vietnam for a while, and it's paid off well for me. But I think Mexico is going to have a lot more investment in manufacturing just because of proximity. The United States too. Even if it's more expensive to produce in Mexico, the shipping costs are so much cheaper. You just drive a truck, pick it up yourself. And then, I mean, India is going to probably have a big surge in investments. And I think the rest of Southeast Asia broadly is going to have a big surge of investments related to it. Yeah. But yeah, pretty much not China is the one.
And regarding which websites or any other forums that you suggest for sellers that they can keep a track on, what's happening and come up with suggestions? Do you suggest any of those
Are you talking
websites?
about like Alibaba or stuff like that, or
like seller forums, to help sellers?
Yeah. I mean, I personally just follow major news source like Wall Street Journal and New York Times, really get a feel for everything. But I mean, trying to think what forums. I'm on a couple of Discord groups too and Reddit groups, but yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And, for the sellers who are listening to this podcast, what kind of advice you will give in order to prepare for the coming tariff? It's not 100% confirmed, but yeah.
No, I would definitely start looking at alternative locations, kind of research your product, what country can made. If it's suitable to be made outside of China, then definitely look at alternatives. If you're kind of stuck with China, I think just, I don't want to say brace for the tariff hit. But the way the new set of tariffs are designed, at least on paper, is that there are less loopholes. So you should be in the same boat as everybody else sourcing from China and get hit with the same price increase. Because I feel like there were some loopholes that allow Chinese sellers kind of really circumvent the people doing it honestly. Like I said, with the de minimis, that's going away. But yeah, definitely just start looking at alternative sourcing locations would be definitely the best bet. Yeah.
And regarding pricing, when you, could you just break us down? So let's assume, we are sourcing a product for $10.
Yeah.
So how the tariff it's going to impact, how much is going to be added to that product?
Yeah, it's going to be 60%, and the the tariff is going to be based on the manufacturer's invoice. So when you ship something from China, or elsewhere, you get the shipping container or whatever, it goes to the port. And as soon as it reaches the port in the United States, one of the documents you have to submit, along with certificate of origin, bill of lading, some other stuff, is the manufacturer invoice. So the CF, Border Patrol, who handles this, will take that, determine HCS code that we were talking about earlier, and figure out duty, taxes, and then also when the tariff applies, apply 60% to the manufacturer invoice, and that's where the tariff gets impacted. So you got the landed cost, but the shipping cost is going to be roughly the same, but it's going to be added to that. So a $10 item, if let's say you buy from China for $10 per unit, that's $6. So $16 is going to be the cost.
Wow.
Yeah.
Imagine if you're selling here, 100,000 or something like that. It's going to be destroy them, right?
No, I know. Yeah, people do 100 million in sales and paying 25, 40 million in tariffs.
Yeah, they should be crying at the moment on the tariff.
No, they're
talking regarding categories. Regarding categories, is that a blanket rise on all the categories, or is there any specific categories that are excluded?
Last one, I think I forgot the exact number, I think 83, 86. So let's just say roughly 85% of all products exported from China were impacted by tariffs. I think one of the exceptions was medical goods, but this time I know they specifically said they're going to apply tariffs in medical goods. That's gloves, stuff like gloves, medical disposable gauze and stuff like that. But I mean, pretty much 85+% is going to be impacted by tariffs of items exported from China. I've not heard them specifically highlight any exceptions they're going to make at this time. Because actually one of the things they specifically said, they probably made a mistake when they did medical goods were exempted just because it discouraged domestic manufacturing of medical goods, which I don't know, something we want.
Yeah. And Jim, do you think any other countries will follow suit, will copy the US for the tariffs, like for European Union? They have done it for the EV, as you mentioned, right?
I mean, it's definitely possible. I mean, once you kind of start the trade war, it's not like we kind of mentioned, polite tariffs one place, but I think some people are definitely going to follow. I think EU is definitely going to look at some things to put tariffs on, but I think they'll be more deliberate with the tariffs, kind of look at things that can be produced domestically and that where China has a unfair competitive edge. Let's just say hypothetically solar panels, probably apply solar panels so they can have more domestic production of solar panels and stuff like that, but not, I don't know if they'll do a blanket tariff. I haven't heard any discussion of EU doing a blanket tariff on China.
Yeah, with solar panels was one of the thing in the EU, for example.
Yeah.
The price crashed so much; it was so cheap to buy. It's better to buy solar panels than to buy the roof sheets and everything.
And
so
China was
they literally
subsidizing that like crazy, and that's actually one of the reasons for batteries too. They're so cheap in China's government's giving literally billions of subsidies. So it's unfair competitive. It's not like a free market per se. So it's technically counteracting that subsidies. So it's.
And do you think is there any other sellers can win with this? Is there any way that they can work around the tariff? So if there's any other way that they can, at the end of the day, win in terms of sales?
Yeah, I mean, kind of mentioned the alternative ones. I mean, at the end of the day, hypothetically, if it's correctly implemented, it's going to apply to everybody equally. So it's not like one person gets hit with what tariff and another person doesn't. So it should be fairly distributed. I mean, last time there were some loopholes, like we kind of mentioned, that allowed actually Shein and Temu to really kind of come out of nowhere and compete. But in terms of that, it's going to be probably more or less the same rules. Just find a unique niche product that, not well served and be the best person to buy that from and have good brand name and all that. But it's really hard to say.
And regarding Mexico, which all product category do you think is going to perform well?
Yeah, it's still a little undeveloped. A lot of the production in Mexico, from our experience, is being set up by, like Ford, for instance, sets up a lot of their auto parts manufacturing, but they kind of own it. So it's not so much OEM, like where people can just go in, pick their own products and sell it, like you can in China. Like when you go to Canton Ferry, find dozen manufacturers, just buy a product. So you kind of do still need to come up with something unique. Like I kind of mentioned the off-road. We work with off-road accessories brand, like grills and shovels and stuff. They're doing Mexico sourcing, but they have their own designs. They're willing to set up their own production. They're paying quite a bit to set up their own production and set up their own molds for their products. So it's stuff like that works, but I think you really kind of need to come up with your own products and find contract manufacturers and make it, and then make sure you have good agreements in place that they won't rip it off or copy it. So you have, you're the only person that has this product on the market. And it's the same in Vietnam. There's not really private label, white label products in Vietnam. Almost all our clients we work with have their own unique idea, and we find contract manufacturers make that unique idea for them.
That's great. And regarding Cosmo sourcing, how can you help sellers to get through this tariff?
Yeah, for sure. So
help them.
Yeah, we're a sourcing company, so basically our job is once we get a product specs and details from our clients, our team finds the best manufacturers for them. So yeah, we have teams based in Vietnam. We're hiring associates throughout Southeast Asia, Mexico, and we have quite a few in place already. Like we have people in Thailand, Indonesia, Mexico, as mentioned, South Korea, and Taiwan too. So yeah, we can definitely help find you suitable manufacturers once we get your product specs and details. Just send it to us, and then we kind of get quotes where our team will go through, verify that manufacturers, make sure they're legit, create a request for quote on your behalf, and ultimately our team gets as many quotes as we can, and it's set up so we do direct introductions between our clients and the manufacturers.
And do you offer any free calls or any ebooks or anything like that?
Yeah, we can offer. Yeah, we got a free ebook about. We actually have two: one for Vietnam sourcing specifically, and another one just beyond China sourcing. So we can give some resources that they can use, like Alibaba alternatives that work outside of Vietnam, kind of a rundown of each country, kind of 15 best countries that around the world for sourcing, and then what products they make, so you know which product category is sourced from, and then kind of resources outside of it to find. So if you want to do it on your own, stuff like global sources and whatnot to find manufacturers. And yeah,
that's great. So I will put the link to the ebook in the show notes. And regarding the website, and where can people find you?
Yeah, cosmosourcing.com is probably the best way. Just go directly to our website. We have a blog, tons of resources for sellers and e-commerce people. We also have Facebook, so you can find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, all the usual socials.
Great. So I will put a link to LinkedIn, Facebook, all those channels, and the website as well in the description. Yeah. Any other words from you, Jim?
No, I mean, just with the trade war, I'm pretty confident it's going to happen. So I think the best time to really start looking for manufacturers is now, just so you get a kind of a head start and kind of have everything in place when the tariffs hit. Otherwise, you're kind of less scrambling, hoping for the best. But yeah, the sooner you get started on this, the better.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thanks a lot for your time. Really appreciate that. All those knowledge that you have shared. Appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Jim.
Hey, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.